There are countless professions in the world, yet often we find ourselves limited to just a few true choices. Even if you work hard in a particular industry, a life envied by others may still feel like a distant dream after a few drinks. Some people cross the finish line through perseverance, while others do not, and this disparity often stems from one's background. Chung, our protagonist, was captivated by the armor displayed in a store he frequently passed. Each time he walked by, he imagined one day wearing such gear, even though he wasn't yet considered an adventurer. He believed that with hard work, he could achieve that goal. Taking notes, he noted that the latest product had enhanced resistance to magic and a sleeker appearance. He thought that the defense rate against attacks could potentially reach 15%, as this new model didn't seem significantly upgraded from its predecessor. Suddenly, an agent warmly welcomed two new customers. One was accompanied by a bodyguard, who reminded him that they had little time left to process a batch of adventurer membership applications. The bodyguard indicated that these applicants were unlikely to qualify for strategies at other guilds, and Hexian, the main customer, ordered his assistant to reject all applications, deeming them unworthy. The agent approached Hexian, mentioning that they had just received new items and offered to introduce them. Hexian agreed, and they moved to the area showcasing the latest gear. The agent explained that the new items were specifically designed for harsh environments, with armor reinforced for poison and cold resistance. Meanwhile, Chung continued to examine the new armor, taking notes. Hexian's attention suddenly turned to Chung, and he asked if he was a reporter. The agent clarified that Chung was simply a regular customer who often visited the store. Hearing this, Hexian stepped closer, revealing that he was just a level 3 adventurer. Chung was taken aback and confused, asking if Hexian needed something. Hexian activated his skill perception, which displayed Chung's stats: level 3, 6 portals entered, and 0 cleared. Annoyed, Hexian scoffed at Chung's note-taking, belittling him for comparing different gear when he hadn't even completed the simplest level strategy. He criticized Chung for being supported by the association through hard-earned taxes, implying that he was wasting resources. Feeling pressured and unsure of how to respond, Chung apologized and tried to leave. However, Hexian grabbed his shoulder, preventing him from walking away, and admonished him not to be rude while speaking with others. In that moment, Chung just wanted to avoid conflict and escape the situation as quickly as possible. Suddenly, Hexian gripped Chung tightly, an electric energy crackling in his hand as he questioned how Chung had reached level 3 without clearing a single dungeon. Chung stared back, then shrugged off Hexian's grasp, stating firmly that he didn't want to be touched, the force of Hexian's grip sending a jolt through the air. Hexian, angered by Chung's words, shot him a menacing glare. Chung coughed violently, realizing he had been affected by Hexian's magical power and was experiencing an allergic reaction. In response, Hexian activated his manifesting arm equipment, clenching his fist as a surge of electric energy coursed through him. He then punched Chung squarely in the stomach, delivering a powerful blow while asking if he couldn't touch him because of that. Chung collapsed to the ground as Hexian berated him, calling him pathetic and insisting that if he wanted any dignity, he needed to make an effort to improve. Hexian expressed his suspicion that Chung might be a spy, threatening him with dire consequences if he reported him to the association. The agent rushed to help Chung to his feet, asking if he was okay, noticing that blood was trickling from his nose. Chung assured her he was fine as he tried to staunch the bleeding. Despite having no personal grudge against Chung, Hexian warned him that if they crossed paths again, he would kill him, advising him to stay away. He then instructed the agent to stop worrying about Chung and focus on introducing the new products. The agent hesitated, concerned for Chung, but he insisted he was fine and thanked her. As Chung left the store, he walked away as if nothing had happened, glancing back at the store. He felt somewhat better, recognizing that Hexian seemed to belong to a powerful guild, and decided it would be wise to avoid trouble with him. Chung, a level 3 adventurer without a profession, realized that he could never truly become an adventurer. A professionless adventurer had no future. One day, strange portals appeared worldwide, leading experts to study the data emanating from them. Initially, only a few monsters emerged, but their numbers quickly escalated, overwhelming the situation. Various countries formed joint military forces, but modern weapons proved ineffective against the creatures. Fortunately, just before resorting to nuclear options, some warriors emerged, displaying extraordinary powers during battles with the monsters. This discovery led to the adventurer profession, allowing ordinary people to gain this status by defeating monsters, akin to earning powerful rewards in a game. Chung was thrilled when a system window unexpectedly popped up, announcing his rewards after defeating a monster. However, his excitement quickly turned to confusion and disappointment upon seeing the result. He had drawn something rarer than the highest level rewards, despite the industry developing for years. Adventurers had become one of the most promising professions for wealth, with those displaying exceptional talent soaring to fame and becoming idols. Since the average adventurer struggles on the brink of life and death for survival, the Adventurers Guild has implemented a straightforward and efficient competition system that emphasizes the importance of talent. Those blessed with talent, power, and wealth dominate most of the available resources, leaving ordinary individuals with little choice but to become scattered and unaffiliated. Meanwhile, those from underprivileged backgrounds are often consumed in this relentless resource hunt. In an abandoned building area, an adventurer named Chung, a level 3 without a profession, found himself in a precarious situation. Despite being an adventurer, he knew he could never truly become one. A professionless adventurer had no future. Suddenly, Chung's teammates called him over, and he was surprised to see them there. He greeted his uncle, Jongguk, and friends Changho and Yal. His uncle explained that today's dungeon appeared to be an E-level 1, but surprisingly, several level 20 adventurers had shown up. Chung understood that it should have been at least a D or C level dungeon. He pulled out his notebook, speculating there might be something special inside. His uncle, familiar with Chung's habits, anticipated he would whip out his precious notebook again. At that moment, a girl named Shan, a level 6 healer, excitedly waved at everyone. She interrupted their conversation, noting that even if there was something valuable inside, they likely wouldn't get anything from it. Chung closed his notebook and clarified that he recorded not only drops but also details about the dungeon's minerals and ecological environment. Shan pointed out that they wouldn't even have a chance to raid the dungeon, questioning the usefulness of his notes. Chung reflected that his research wasn't entirely pointless. Understanding the dangers of dungeons could significantly increase their chances of survival. He also aspired to become an adventurer capable of raiding dungeons one day. Just then, their attention shifted as someone emerged from the portal. It was Hexian, stepping out confidently with a smirk, fully aware that everyone was watching him. An announcement echoed that the young master had arrived, and he tucked away his equipment, indicating they would start soon. Chung was taken aback to see Hexian there. Hexian praised one of his members for performing well last time, allowing them to pick a piece of equipment from the warehouse after their task. The member thanked him, but then Hassan's mood soured as he spotted Chung from a distance. Realizing Hexian had noticed him, Chung quickly turned around, grabbing Shan's hand and urging her to leave. Shan looked confused, but it was too late for Chung. Hexian had already restrained him, asking if he was ignoring his words. Chung felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. Chung pushed aside his fear, shaking off Hexian's grip and asserting that his whereabouts were none of Hexian's concern. This infuriated Hexian, who seized Chung by the head and kicked him in the abdomen. The force knocked Chung to the ground, triggering his allergic reaction to magic. Hexian tightened his grip on Chung's head, conjuring a massive fireball and reminding him that he was the one who assigned them a worthless job. He warned Chung that if he made him angry, he could kill him right then and there without anyone intervening. Noticing something off about Chung, Hexian asked if he was sick, as he was coughing and had a bleeding nose. Fortunately for Chung, a security officer from the association intervened, demanding that Hexian let him go or she would report him for his behavior, as the association's leader had prohibited such treatment. Hearing this, Hexian redirected the fireball, launching it away from them. The fireball hurtled toward nearby people, causing panic as it exploded and scattered debris. The security officer scolded Hexian, but he merely smiled and joked that his hands had slipped after holding the fireball for too long. He stood over Chung, belittling him as a natural-born loser who aspired to be an adventurer without any talent, questioning the point of his existence. Meanwhile, Chung struggled to his feet, anger boiling within him as he faced the wound on his face. As Chung slowly walked away, Shan rushed to him, concerned for his well-being. Hexian, in contrast, invited the security officer to join him for a drink. Nearby, the fire mage and the tank smirked, plotting to intimidate Chung further, with the mage inquiring about the special treatment Hexian had mentioned. Hexian agreed, instructing them to leave the rest to him. The tank then announced that it was time to form a line before entering the portals. They detected magic suitable for levels 3 to 5, noting that the monsters had already been cleared, meaning even low-level adventurers wouldn't be in danger. Shan continued to worry about Chung's condition, asking if he was okay. Chung reassured her that he was fine. The portal led to another world, constantly emitting magic. By measuring the leaked magic, they could ascertain the level of danger inside. Using their specialized tools, they found the level to be unknown, as dungeons were ranked from A to E. However, based on his experience, Chung had only encountered E and D-level dungeons. E dungeons were generally suitable for adventurers between levels 1 to 5, but they weren't there to raid, they were there to gather minerals. Typically, adventurers engaged in this work were below level 10, often failures pushed out of the industry, with few opportunities to enter dungeons unless hired. As Chung and Shan approached the portal, Chung reached out, ensuring it wouldn't close until they had completed their task. However, the dungeon drops and boss loot were not their concern. Whenever Chung's body comes into contact with magic, it triggers a rejection reaction that inflicts unbearable pain. As a result, he has no choice but to endure it, otherwise, he wouldn't survive in the Tower of Forgetfulness. After successfully entering the tower, Chung's allergy was activated upon stepping through the portal, causing his nose to bleed. He knelt on the ground, gritting his teeth against the pain. Shan and his uncle rushed to his side, asking if he was okay. Meanwhile, the mage and defender noticed Chung's struggle. The mage teased him, calling him the abandoned adventurer, while the defender mocked him for being a loser because of his condition. After a few minutes, Chung's body returned to normal. He was accustomed to this embarrassment, as it happened every time he encountered magic. Just then, the assault warrior instructed everyone to get started in the area. Shan, still concerned about Chung, scanned the surroundings and was surprised to find him in a corner, focused on switching stones as he dug. Chung's two uncles felt pity for him. One uncle, who had just recovered from vomiting blood, commented on Chung's hard work, while the other uncle mentioned the teasing about him being the abandoned adventurer. Curious, the second uncle asked what that meant. The first uncle explained that during the adventurer's awakening ceremony, some individuals have a rare chance of developing a condition similar to a hidden profession, where their bodies reject magic, leading to allergic reactions. This condition, referred to as magic disease, could cause severe damage to their organs and, in the worst cases, result in sudden death during battles when using skills. Even healing spells could become lethal. Those afflicted were typically labeled as abandoned adventurers. Chung's status indicated that his body could not withstand the burden of adventure magic, preventing him from obtaining a profession. Despite being level 3, he had entered numerous portals for work, gaining minimal experience. If he hadn't been afflicted, he could have been a powerhouse. Realizing he couldn't fight, Chung focused on farming crystals, knowing that the meager experience from exploration was his only way to level up. While treatment for magic disease was possible abroad, it required significant funds. Chung pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket, an advertisement for the Adventurer Guild, recruiting strategy advisors to plan routes and dungeon tactics. This document inspired him to earn enough money to cure his condition and acquire equipment, igniting a passion within him. He vowed to become an adventurer once more. Just then, a cart full of crystals arrived, and someone asked if this was the last load. Chung was busy loading his crystals onto the cart when someone reminded the group that they needed to leave soon. Staying any longer would risk attracting higher-level adventurers, making the dungeon more dangerous, something everyone agreed on, as they couldn't handle level 20 monsters. Chung's attention shifted as he sensed something strange in the area. He looked toward the Tower of Forgetfulness, feeling a strong magic emanating from it, and wondered if the final boss room was located there. Realizing there might not be just one boss in this dungeon, he suspected there were two, given the presence of two towers. Suddenly, someone slashed his back, causing him to drop the crystals. Panic ensued, especially from Shan, who rushed to Chung, asking what was happening. The mage interjected, telling her not to blame them since the boss had instructed them to look after Chung. The assault warrior threatened everyone, warning them to back off if they wanted to live. Chung's allergies flared up, recalling Hsien words about why he kept being targeted. Clutching the painful area on his left side, Chung listened as the mage explained that Hsien had mentioned his magic disease and felt pity for him, ordering them to send him away. However, Chung stood up, fighting through the pain. Shan urged him not to confront them, but he ignored her, feeling that being a useless adventurer was almost a crime in itself. The mage summoned his skill, belittling Chung for wanting to be an adventurer despite his illness. He threatened to use his highest level skill to kill Chung in one blow. Chung smirked, understanding what Hsien meant about needing help, especially for someone like him, who was desperately trying to survive. He saw the villainous aura around them and questioned what they knew about him, noting that they were mere outlaws who took pleasure in harming others. Chung couldn't fathom their motives, having done nothing to provoke them. He wondered if they believed they could judge others' lives at will. Meanwhile, in the real world, someone mentioned a new association policy aimed at reducing excessive competition and investing more in low-level adventurers, thanking someone for their support in nurturing them. The person assured them that there was no need for politeness. Hearing this, Hsien laughed, mocking the low-level warriors as trash and suggesting that no one would care if one or two went missing. The caller advised him to be cautious, warning that if the inspection department got involved, no one would be able to help. Hexian assured him it wouldn't come to that, smirking because he knew that anyone who shouldn't be alive wouldn't leave that place today. In his view, the world revolved around the strong, and no one cared about the weak. Back in the dungeon, a gigantic fireball formed in the air as the mage hurled it at Chung. He narrowly avoided it, but the impact severely damaged the ground, sending debris flying. Some rocks struck his face, causing it to bleed. Chung recognized it as a level 3 fireball skill from a magic-type profession. Chung desperately tried to escape, fearing that the mage would unleash his highest level skill. However, it became clear that the mage intended to torture him instead. Another fireball was hurled at Chung, and this time he couldn't evade it. The fireball struck him directly, causing a massive explosion. As the dust cleared, the mage grinned, knowing he had finally hit his target. Chung was propelled into the air by the force of the impact. Overcome with emotion, he burst into tears, still clinging to the hope of becoming an adventurer and refusing to accept that he might die like this. In a moment of determination, he summoned his weapon and charged at the mage. The mage, anticipating Chung's attack, summoned his magic once more to counter it. However, he was shocked when Chung's strike landed, catching him off guard and suppressing him. In that moment, Chung's heart raced uncontrollably as his allergies flared up again, causing him to vomit blood. Struggling to stay on his feet, Chung unexpectedly found himself at the mercy of the assault warrior, who laughed maniacally as he stepped on Chung's head. With a cruel smile, the warrior plunged his sword into Chung's body, causing blood to splatter. Thanking Chung for the entertainment, he watched as Chung vomited more blood, consumed by pain and questioning whether he was truly going to die. Confused and desperate, Chung wondered why he had to face this fate simply because he lacked power. Meanwhile, other warriors were equally bewildered, questioning why they were being killed as well. The assault warrior explained that they couldn't allow them to leave and talk about it. At that moment, the Tower of Forgetfulness released dark energy, indicating a dungeon anomaly. The screen flashed, revealing that the dungeon boss had been replaced with a higher-level threat. Suddenly, the tower was enveloped in a white aura as a figure approached the mage, a white-haired man with a muscular build. With ease, he crushed the mage's head into the ground. Chung's consciousness began to fade as he witnessed the fate of the mage. It turned out that 2 Grim Reapers had arrived in the dungeon, one smirking while holding the mage's severed head. In a parallel universe, Chung found himself standing in a cold, dark place, confused about his surroundings. As he checked every corner, he heard a voice announcing the detection of a player, which made him wonder where it was coming from. Suddenly, a cursed shrine appeared, instructing him to proceed. Looking at the blood-stained shrine, Chung felt a mix of fear and curiosity. He realized the voice seemed to be emanating from inside the shrine. Driven by intrigue, he reached inside, only to be startled when something bit him. A cursed brush appeared, teasing him while calling him a pervert. The brush warmly welcomed Chung, asking if he was the one who activated the system. Confused, Chung questioned what the brush meant by the system and what kind of place this was, given its emptiness. The mention of empty baffled the cursed brush, which asked what Chung was talking about. The cursed brush surprised Chung by pointing out that the gates of hell were right behind him. Looking at the water's reflection, Chung saw the massive gate, its chains glinting ominously. When he slowly turned around, he was astonished to find the gigantic gate looming behind him. The cursed brush informed him that he was already dead. Chung froze in fear, his eyes widening in shock as he recalled the events in the dungeon, where he had been killed by the assault warrior's sword. Realizing the truth of his death, he sank to the ground, devastated. He felt frustrated, having only wanted to cure his disease and become a regular adventurer. The cursed brush, with a hint of sarcasm, asked if Chung needed some comfort, explaining that his life had been miserable to begin with, so there was little point in living. It urged Chung to stop being dramatic since he was already dead and that they needed to enter the gate. Chung looked at the brush in confusion just as the ground began to shake, and the gates of hell slowly opened. As they entered, Chung asked what would happen to him now that he was dead. The cursed brush replied to just come along. Chung's face reflected his depression, but the cursed brush was impressed by how quickly he accepted his fate. Upon reaching their destination, Chung asked where they were and why it was so dark. The cursed brush reassured him that he would understand soon. Suddenly, all the torches in the room ignited, revealing a vast space that amazed Chung. The cursed brush explained that this was the trial site and urged him to follow. Chung looked around, feeling as if he were in the palace of a giant king, despite only having seen such places online. The cursed brush reminded him to stop being amazed and to hurry. However, Chung's attention shifted to a gigantic corpse in the room. The cursed brush insisted that he show some respect for Lord Yama's remains. Chung recognized the name Lord Yama and listened as the cursed brush explained that when a person dies, their soul comes to the underworld for judgment based on their life's actions. The wicked would be condemned to eternal punishment in hell, with only the ruler of the underworld having the authority to pass judgment. This ruler commanded countless soldiers and ghostly minions. Hearing this, Chung remembered a concept from mythology about a god who writes the lifespans of the living with a pen, which he confirmed was indeed Lord Yama. Annoyed, Chung widened his eyes and asked how the ruler of the underworld could possibly be dead, urging the brush to stop spinning tales. The cursed brush countered, questioning who would dare lie about such a thing, insisting that dead meant dead. Still skeptical, Chung asked who would believe this ghost story. In response, the cursed brush pointed to a wall covered in writing and told him to examine the words. As Chung approached the wall, he inquired about what was written. The cursed brush insisted he needed to see for himself. Chung complained, expressing frustration at being unable to understand without an explanation. Suddenly, Chung felt a strange sensation, as if he could comprehend the words on the wall. His curiosity piqued, he began examining the carvings, suspecting they were records. He noticed a damaged painting depicting the god of the underworld and his soldiers engaged in battle. As he observed the surrounding images, he found some unclear messages next to them. By piecing together the text, he discerned a general meaning: Lord Yama, the initiator of the war, had been defeated, his head severed and buried here. For some reason, a monument and mural had been erected to protect his corpse. Looking back at the wall, Chung realized it was filled with Lord Yama's grievances and curses against someone. This revelation shocked him. He questioned whether a war among the rulers of the world could be real. Suddenly, a notification appeared, announcing a solo mission. Among the many heroes, find the one true head of Lord Yama. There was no time limit, and the reward was a potion that could heal all pain and wounds, called Mang Pup. After reading it, Chung wondered if this pen was related, but the cursed brush interrupted, explaining that this was the trial mentioned earlier. Completing it would allow him to return to life. The brush revealed that Chung was only half dead, not truly dead, which startled him. He had believed he was completely dead. In frustration, he bonked his head and fell to the ground. Reading the notification again, Chung realized he wasn't entirely dead, at least not in the conventional sense. Although he wasn't sure if this place was a dungeon, the most important thing for him was to come back to life. He pondered whether completing the mission would lead to his resurrection. Despite the doubts surrounding the task, the Mang Pup potion seemed to hold the potential to cure his long-sought disease. Determined, he quickly pressed the yes button, willing to take the risk. Suddenly, a multitude of heads began to fall from above. As they descended, Chung panicked, realizing the heads were staring at him. He immediately asked the cursed brush about the heads. The brush informed him that the trial had begun. Chung clarified that out of so many heads, only one was real, but the cursed brush explained that these heads were piled like a mountain. Feeling helpless, Chung asked how he was supposed to find the right one. The cursed brush teased him, saying that if it were easy, it wouldn't be a trial. Determined, Chung started searching for Lord Yama's head, picking through the options one by one, noting that many clearly weren't the right one. The cursed brush agreed, and as heads continued to fall, Chung grew increasingly frustrated. He complained about the lack of clues, remarking that puzzles in dungeons usually offered hints. As he continued his search, he lamented the absence of any guidance in this trial, feeling overwhelmed by the mountain of heads surrounding him. Chung returned to the wall inscribed with Lord Yama's writings, recalling a detail from the mission window. He realized that the only text present was the prompt information, which must contain hidden clues. The cursed brush, attempting to distract him, asked if he had ever been a great adventurer. Chung urged it to stop bothering him. As he read, a smirk crept onto Chung's face. He had finally found the clue he was searching for. The cursed brush noticed his expression and panicked, demanding to know what secret he had uncovered. While Chung continued digging through the pile of heads, the brush pressed him for information, claiming it could assist him if he shared what he had learned. After several minutes of searching, Chung moved to another pile of heads. The cursed brush continued to inquire about his findings, eager to help. Suddenly, Chung's excitement peaked as he picked up a head, believing it to be Lord Yama's. He examined it closely, noting the inscription that indicated Lord Yama, even in death, continued to glare at his enemies, with a large scar from the final blow he had not avoided. Chung quickly turned to the cursed brush, asking if he was correct. The brush advised him not to rush and that he would find out soon enough, retreating from where Chung stood. This puzzled Chung. He wondered why the brush mentioned soon. Just then, the right eye of the head emitted a laser light, and Chung realized it was about to explode. A massive explosion ensued, and unfortunately for Chung, he was caught in it. He was thrown back onto the pile of heads, sustaining significant damage from the blast. Weakly lying there, he told the cursed brush that the head had exploded. The brush, teasing him, expressed mock pity, suggesting he had made an error. Chung quickly stood up, feeling pain radiating throughout his body, and questioned where he had gone wrong. The inscription had only mentioned details about Lord Yama's face, leading him to suspect that Lord Yama might not have a human visage. Despite the pain, he pressed on, determined to find Lord Yama's head, convinced there had to be other viable options. Seeing Chung's determination, the cursed brush complimented his hard work and promised to reveal some secrets. Chung paused, intrigued, as the brush explained that there was a time limit for the trial, specifically, the time it took for the black and white impermanents to completely clear the dungeon of intruders. Chung's accidental death had activated the system, which began running according to its preset program. The black and white impermanence was meant to eliminate monsters that caused player deaths, but in reality, it was humans who had led to his demise, including some of his companions. The brush warned that unless Chung completed the trial and took over the system, the black and white impermanence would kill every living thing present. Chung was frozen in place, struggling to process what he had just heard. Sweat began to bead on his forehead as his mind raced with questions. He thought of Zahn and the others, worrying whether they were okay or if they were currently battling the black and white impermanence. Driven by desperation, he started digging furiously for the head, realizing that the time it took to eliminate the intruders might coincide with the trial's time limit. If he didn't act quickly, everyone would die. As he searched, he was determined to find the answer as soon as possible. If he failed to hurry, the lives of everyone in the dungeon would be at stake. Suddenly, he spotted a head that resembled the one he sought and rushed toward it, calling out that he had found it. However, as soon as he touched it, another large explosion erupted, and this time, the force knocked Chung unconscious. When he regained consciousness, he found himself buried in a pile of heads. He quickly raised his hands and stood up, panicking as he asked how long he had been out. The cursed brush flew close to him, informing him that he had been unconscious for about 20 minutes. Shocked, Chung realized how long it had taken before he collapsed. The cursed brush then revealed that he had triggered a trap. Chung inquired whether this was punishment for the puzzle, glancing at the heads floating above. The cursed brush reminded him that time was running out. Hearing this, Chung's expression turned serious, causing him to freeze again. Then, unexpectedly, he broke into a devilish laugh, startling the cursed brush. Confused by Chung's sudden shift in demeanor, the cursed brush watched as Chung continued to laugh, claiming he had already figured everything out. He questioned the existence of the potion and his own status as half-dead. With a smirk, he told the cursed brush that he understood the situation and jokingly asked how it was possible for a potion to cure all diseases. The cursed brush grew annoyed at the dark humor, telling Chung he was being crazy. It explained that in online strategy records, there were often reports of dark dungeon rules designed to toy with people's emotions. These rules could range from tormenting individuals to inciting them to kill one another, constantly swinging between hope and despair. The brush highlighted that the multitude of heads was deliberately created for Chung to choose from, but in reality, there was no correct answer. Ultimately, it was just a demonic level meant to manipulate human nature. The only truth was that it was playing with people's hearts. Chung sat in a corner while the cursed brush asked if he had given up, reminding him that once he made that choice, resurrection would be impossible. It inquired again if he had decided to quit, but Chung ignored it. Meanwhile, a forum thread about dark jokes gained popularity online for its inherent cruelty, designed to play with people's minds, leading players into division and isolation, sometimes even inciting them to kill one another. It was as if a little demon lurked behind the portal, watching its toys, the players, as they approached the dungeon. Realizing this, Chung couldn't help but laugh at his own foolishness for thinking this was a second chance at life, calling himself stupid. He glanced at the cursed brush and noticed it seemed anxious. Turning away, he told himself that it was none of his business. However, the cursed brush called out to him, warning him to be careful. Chung looked back, smiling, but pondered what the brush was really trying to convey. At that moment, Chung noticed an old man with a white beard floating nearby. He observed that the heads in the room bobbed around as if in zero gravity, drifting after impacts and explosions before eventually settling down. Curious, he wondered why the heads floated on their own. He stood up and described the scene, likening the floating heads to stirring water with a stick, creating ripples that moved leaves on the surface. He lightly tossed one of the heads with his finger, suddenly recalling something about a stick stirring water and the paintings he had seen, which caused him to freeze. Chung realized that speculation was a poor substitute for action. He looked up, gauging the approximate position from before, and repositioned himself, determined to try again. He threw a head toward the cursed brush, who was distracted, hoping something would happen if his guess was correct. The cursed brush, unaware of the approaching head, was startled when it hit him. Annoyed, he yelled, asking what Chung was doing. Chung feigned innocence, asking if he had done something wrong. The cursed brush, realizing he couldn't let Chung keep messing around without figuring things out, feigned calmness. He asked if Chung had given up, claiming it would be much better that way. Noticing the oddity in the brush's demeanor, Chung asked why it was speaking so nicely to him. This made the cursed brush break into a cold sweat as he insisted he had always been kind, suggesting that Chung simply wait until time was up. Chung smiled, having already found his answer. The carvings and murals on the walls were key clues to the trial, and he knew that if he missed another crucial part, the puzzle would become unsolvable. Initially, he thought the trial was merely an extra layer of protection placed by King Yama to safeguard his body. While he couldn't read the words on the walls, he could feel the message they conveyed. The final words in the text hinted that this trial was meant for a specific individual, and if King Yama truly wanted to prevent anyone from finding his head, he could have set a death trap instead of placing the real head in the room. The true answer was always positioned above and behind the puzzle solver, shifting as the solver changed direction. As Chung walked around the room, he felt confident about where the answer lay, knowing there was one last step to take. The cursed brush observed Chung closely, noticing something strange about his actions. Chung approached King Yama's corpse, pondering how he would retrieve the head that was fixed behind him, questioning if the mythological King Yama resembled this figure. He thought that climbing up would be too crude a solution and recalled the phrase, "Broaden your perspective." Chung began to analyze the situation, pondering who the Old One mentioned in the text could be, as the final step of the puzzle clearly related to that figure. Meanwhile, the cursed brush, feeling annoyed, questioned why Chung was still moving, given that he had supposedly given up and that the trial was no longer his concern. Suddenly, Chung fixed his gaze on the cursed brush, startling it. He realized that there was something the enemy would never do, showing proper etiquette. He then approached King Yama's corpse, prompting the cursed brush to ask where he was going this time. Chung decided to perform the proper etiquette, hoping it would yield results. He paid his respects to King Yama's corpse, believing that this method might help him retrieve the head. When nothing happened initially, Chung noticed the red head he had seen earlier perched atop the corpse. Refusing to lose hope, he recalled that King Yama was the ruler of the underworld and thought he should perform a kowtow. He quickly executed the deep, respectful bow, touching his forehead to the ground. As he completed the kowtow, a sudden, immense light erupted from the top of the corpse, indicating that his performance had succeeded. It turned out that King Yama's head was already on his body, radiating a powerful aura. Despite not knowing who had set this trial for him, Chung recognized that he needed this opportunity to be reborn. A notification then appeared, congratulating Chung on completing the trial and confirming that the Mang Pup had taken effect. After obtaining the potion, Chung respawned outside the Hell Gate, a smile spreading across his face as he joyfully celebrated his success, feeling the magic flowing through him and realizing that his sickness was gone. The system screen informed him that the trial had been completed, that he had fulfilled his promise, and that he had obtained the agreed-upon item. His new profession was now listed as an Inter of the Underworld. Curious about this title, Chung wondered if it might be a hidden profession. Suddenly, the cursed brush transformed into a gigantic monster with sharp teeth, looming menacingly behind him. Unaware of its rage, it threatened to eat him alive. Feeling something was off, Chung teased the cursed brush, asking if it needed to get super mad. However, the brush's mouth opened wide, attempting to consume him. Startled, Chung thought it was just a joke, but panic set in as the brush lunged at him. In a fit of anger, it brutally devoured Chung, causing him to scream. Chung's consciousness struggled to recover after the cursed brush's violent attack, and all he could hear was the brush explaining to King Yama that the trial had been completed and that he hadn't messed around, as he was a senior official in the underworld. The brush felt it was unfair to be in charge of a newcomer and swore it wouldn't happen again. As Chung's eyes slowly opened, he was met with a tall, dark figure. Eventually, his consciousness faded again, revealing that numerous demonic creatures surrounded him. Someone ordered that the judge's pen be retrieved since the selection trial of the kings had concluded, and their plan had been thwarted by 48. With no successor in sight, they decided to place their bets on Chung and see how things would unfold for him. Adventurers are among the wealthiest individuals in the world, their riches recognized globally due to the real risks they take. In this era of adventurers, it's common to see crowds gathered outside portals. On this particular occasion, a large crowd had assembled around one portal, with some people panicking as they inquired about their loved ones who had entered. Friends, parents, wives, and children anxiously searched for their missing relatives, knowing that losing someone to the dungeon was a frequent tragedy. For many, returning home safely was considered the greatest fortune. Suddenly, someone screamed for help, and moments later, a figure burst through the portal, Chung, gasping for air. He gratefully thanked whoever had helped him, only to realize it was the cursed brush, which laughed and welcomed him back. Surprised, Chung quickly punched the cursed brush and tossed it aside. The brush explained that Chung had escaped death's door after a woman found him outside and that some people dressed in black had taken him to the morgue. Understanding why he was in the morgue, Chung felt a pang of sadness at the thought that no one had survived the Reaper's onslaught. He turned to the cursed brush, asking if there had been any survivors. The brush informed him that aside from himself, only 2 others had made it out. It suggested they discuss it later and focus on escaping first, to which Chung agreed. Meanwhile, a staff member in the morgue muttered to himself about being exhausted from receiving multiple injured adventurers from the association. He questioned why he had to make deliveries while pushing a dead body into the room. Chung rushed to the man's side, causing him to stop and order Chung to refrain from running around in a hospital. They locked eyes, and the man asked if Chung knew where he was. The cursed brush urged Chung to keep moving, warning that the man might recognize him as a dead person, which could lead to trouble. Chung, realizing the urgency, held the man up as he began to faint. The cursed brush scolded him for stopping and insisted they keep going. Reluctantly, Chung set the man down, knowing they needed to escape the hospital quickly. Meanwhile, a woman on the phone assured the caller that she would handle the situation, expressing her concern that they hadn't anticipated an accident at a level 5 portal. The chief was rather strict. Behind her, Chung and the cursed brush panicked at the thought of being recognized. Chung scolded the cursed brush for suggesting a certain direction, which caught the woman's attention. She turned around, but all she saw was a crowd of people passing by. Yet, she sensed that someone had been there just moments ago. After a brief time on the busy street, dotted with houses, Chung successfully made his way out of the hospital and returned home. He entered his room and locked the door. Curious, the cursed brush asked if he lived in a place like this. Annoyed, Chung questioned whether the brush was dissatisfied with his home. The cursed brush compared his room to the spaciousness of the underworld, prompting Chung to remark that the housing prices must be quite low there. The brush added that it was free for the dead. Suddenly, Chung lay down on his bed, feeling a wave of relief wash over him after a long, stressful day. The cursed brush then asked where his family was. Chung calmly explained that he had no family and lived alone. The brush accepted this and jokingly speculated about Chung's origins, suggesting he might have popped out of a rock. This comment made Chung feel a bit sad. He then shared that both of his parents were adventurers who went missing when he was young after entering a portal and never returned. Chung was one of those who couldn't find peace, often standing in front of the portal for long stretches. Some people looked at him with pity, while others suggested he might as well clean toilets. As he searched for information on his phone, Chung felt a sense of dissatisfaction, wondering why he couldn't find anything. It had been decades since adventurers first appeared, and rare professions had been recorded, including necromancers, messengers of God, and charioteers. Hidden professions had long since become relics of the past. Chung hesitated, knowing that no profession like his had ever existed. He remembered he had a rare job and considered that maybe he could still find something unique. Yet, he went silent, putting his phone down and questioning whether it was right to continue as an adventurer, especially since he had already died once. The thought of the traitors who had killed him weighed heavily on his mind. He realized that leveling up from level 1 again wouldn't be easy, and the competition among adventurers was fierce. Anger bubbled within him as he gritted his teeth, fearing that a similar fate could befall him again. He thought about what Hexion had done to him and the way low-level adventurers were often exploited. Those people toyed with the lives of others, and this realization made Chung grip the sheets tightly in frustration. He wondered if he would survive. After a moment, Chung sighed, reflecting on how chaotic everything was. Yet, if he didn't continue as an adventurer, he had no idea how he would face the future. Meanwhile, the cursed brush glanced at a broom in the corner, seemingly uninterested. Chung added that ever since his parents disappeared, rumors had surrounded him at school, leading to bullying and making it difficult for him to connect with others. Quickly shaking off those thoughts, Chung sat up and decided to focus on the skill he had obtained. He commanded the system to display his skills, swiping through the air to bring up the information. Chung was puzzled when nothing appeared on the screen, especially since he had seen others display their skills earlier. The cursed brush cursed under its breath and asked how a level 1 adventurer could have skills. Frustrated, Chung exclaimed that everyone else had skills and questioned how a level 1 could even enter a dungeon and level up. The cursed brush reassured him not to worry. To celebrate his rebirth, the system had granted him a gift. Surprised by the mention of a gift, Chung was notified that his mission was to head to the Adventurers Association, with the reward remaining unknown. He asked if it was the same mission board he had encountered before, and the cursed brush suggested they should go check it out. Before long, they arrived at the Adventurers Association. Chung wondered why his mission had directed him there. Upon entering the building, he expressed concern about being seen, but the cursed brush reassured him that no one could see him except for Chung himself. The brush advised him to lower his voice. Chung was anxious about their presence there, prompting the cursed brush to explain that he was giving Chung a tour since he had been around for a while. Chung requested that the brush not run off, and they paused in an area where a man was killing a monster. Chung explained that this was an awakening area, where anyone who killed their first monster would awaken as an adventurer. The cursed brush grimaced at the foul smell in the room. Suddenly, the cursed brush asked if this large building was solely for awakening, to which Chung disagreed, stating that it handled everything related to an adventurer's identity. The brush then sensed a strong magic coming from upstairs and asked about it. Chung explained that it was the magic of countless portals, noting that each branch of the association had public portals for low-level adventurers, especially level 1s, to rank up to level 2. After clearing a dungeon, the association would issue a report based on the adventurer's loot, casualties, and the wounds inflicted on the monsters. If the adventurer performed well, they might catch the eye of a guild and receive an invitation for training. Impressed, the cursed brush remarked on how much Chung knew, jokingly referring to him as a useless level 1. Chung thanked him but playfully threatened to throw the brush away. Just then, a heavily armored man bumped into Chung, causing him to lose his balance. The man, irritated, brushed off his gear and told Chung to be more careful. Chung quickly apologized, but the man glared at him. The cursed brush explained that the man had used a skill to glance at Chung's panel with disdain. As Chung wiped his shirt, the brush asked if he wasn't bothered by the man's terrible attitude. Chung shrugged, explaining that he couldn't do much since he was only level 1. From a distance, the cursed brush noticed that the heavily armored man bowed to someone in a tuxedo. Chung explained that the tuxedo-clad individual could help him enhance his adventurer record. The cursed brush remarked that the man looked very strong. Smirking, it wondered if that was how the world operated. Just then, the system notified Chung again, and he quickly read the message. His eyes widened in surprise as the system informed him of the mission objective. He needed to choose a dungeon at the association, with the reward remaining unknown. Chung sighed in relief, thinking that choosing a dungeon would be easy. The cursed brush advised him to take it step by step and not rush ahead. Stretching his body, Chung reminded himself that he was level 1, so there was no need to hurry. However, as they approached the dungeon, he felt a wave of fear wash over him. The cursed brush asked what he was waiting for, and Chung, now paranoid, questioned why he was the only one entering the dungeon. The cursed brush clarified that he meant to take things step by step. Frustrated, Chung demanded a better explanation. Just then, a notification from the system popped up, informing him that his mission was to clear the dungeon solo. The cursed brush urged him to calm down, saying he couldn't control the mission's content. This only made Chung angrier as he pointed out that dungeons typically required at least a 4-person team to clear, just like the last time. After inquiring, a staff member confirmed that he had applied for a level 3 dungeon and needed to select which dungeon to enter first. He would then be assigned to a team. Once he made his choice, he could go to the prep room to gather any items he thought necessary, with no limit on quantity. He would also receive dungeon information to help him prepare. Chung carefully read through the options, considering the difficulty and monster types. The choices included the extinct volcano's foothill settlement, the Banshee's Lament, the Wind Parade, and the Water Spirit Ruins. The cursed brush noticed Chung's hesitation and, irritated, offered to help him choose. It quickly clicked on a selection, prompting Chung to angrily ask what it had done. The cursed brush insisted he should thank it. Frustrated, Chung refused, stating he was still deciding. The staff member then informed him that the Water Spirit Ruins had been recorded in his application and suggested he head to the prep room to gather his items. In reality, the cursed brush finally agreed to give Chung an extra life-saving skill and told him to check his mission. When Chung looked, the system notified him that his mission involved the brush's 100,000 jokes, with the first task being to slap the brush, and the reward was unknown. Infuriated, Chung choked the brush further as it explained that it wasn't its fault, the mission content was generated by the system. If Chung abandoned the mission, he would lose both the Mang Pup and the life granted by the system. Realizing that giving up could mean his death, Chung released the brush and decided to proceed with the mission. He activated his skill called Hellfire Embers, a remnant flame from the Hellfire Sea that would burn continuously, consuming MP to use. He also activated another skill called Paper Men, which utilized paper figures as a medium to summon 3 souls that transformed into paper figures, creating a confusing effect that made them appear as the user. Cheerfully, Chung recognized that acquiring fake figures with confusing effects alongside a life-saving skill was a stroke of luck for any adventurer. He couldn't believe he had learned such valuable skills, now possessing both Hellfire Embers and Paper Men, along with a few MP recovery potions. Chung gathered some bandages, a few smoke bombs, and other basic items, knowing that while these resources were essential for clearing a dungeon under such extreme conditions, carrying too much would become burdensome. He entered the Water Spirit Ruins dungeon, planning to follow the map to find the correct route while avoiding monsters as much as possible, aiming to complete his mission with minimal combat and expense. As he read the description of the Water Spirit Ruins, he learned it was once the home of water sprites, who had been driven away, leaving behind various aquatic predators and traps. The dungeon's objective, set by the association, was to reach designated beacons within the labyrinth, which would guarantee a successful exit. This made Chung wonder why the ultimate goal involved defeating the dungeon boss. He discovered that many of the association's portals offered significant benefits to adventurers, but once conquered, they disappeared, essentially becoming consumable resources. However, someone had found a loophole. As long as the boss's room remained unopened, the portal entrance wouldn't close, allowing new monsters to appear over time. This method turned the dungeon into a training ground for adventurers, making every portal a sort of training field. The Cursed Brush expressed disappointment at this loophole, calling the adventurers cheaters. Chung, however, remained focused. Before implementing his strategy, he needed to confirm one thing. He prepared his shoes, tightening them securely. After standing up and checking the quality of the water-walking boots, which were crafted from magic-imbued materials, he felt grateful that he was now cured of his magic disease and could wear them without fear. Noticing the boots were functioning properly, Chung's eyes widened with excitement. Unable to contain his joy, he celebrated by running across the water, exclaiming that his magic disease was truly gone. The Cursed Brush, disappointed that Chung hadn't believed him earlier, watched as Chung reveled in his newfound ability. After the brief celebration, Chung geared up, knowing it was time to set off. He observed the map, explaining that the water-filled area was expansive with many ruins that could provide cover. Moving slowly, he speculated that the map was hand-drawn by some staff member from the association. As they followed the map, Chung cautioned the Cursed Brush not to approach a nearby starfish, warning that it would jump up and try to eat him. While exploring, the Cursed Brush spotted a frog with a halo above its head and asked what kind of creature it was, wondering if it might be dead. Chung explained that it was a soul-form frog enchanted with soul magic to serve as a lookout post. He felt relieved that, so far, they hadn't encountered any monsters, and if things went well, he might clear the dungeon unscathed. Suddenly, the system notified him that his solo dungeon exploration mission required him to kill one monster. Infuriated, Chung began to beat the Cursed Brush, accusing it of reporting him again and claiming it must have conspired with the system. The Cursed Brush insisted it wasn't responsible for this and had done nothing to influence the mission. Chung had no choice but to accept the situation while scanning every corner of the area. He remembered the main monsters that inhabited this dungeon when, suddenly, a duck man appeared out of nowhere. From a distance, Chung identified it as a duck man, recalling that records described them as pack creatures. Fortunately for him, this one was all alone. The duck man became startled upon seeing Chung charging toward him and quickly attempted to escape, changing direction as he ran. While chasing the duck man, Chung noticed a whistle hanging from its chest and decided that destroying it should be his first priority. He prepared to cast his skill, Fire Ember, but the Cursed Brush corrected him, reminding him it was Hellfire Embers and that he needed to say it correctly. Chung hesitated, feeling that his target was too small to hit accurately. The Cursed Brush advised him to coat his weapon with the Hellfire Embers. Understanding this, Chung summoned his weapon and aimed it at the duck man with determination. As he activated his skill, he successfully created a flame coating. While the duck man continued to flee, Chung launched the flame coating toward him. The attack hit the duck man directly, dealing significant damage and causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. Chung approached slowly, sword in hand, marveling at the power of his skill, which didn't extinguish even in water, though it consumed MP as it burned. The Cursed Brush praised Chung for his choice of weapon, noting that if he had used something else, the duck man might have escaped. The duck man, seeing Chung approach, grew fearful and struggled to stand, but the damage from the skill had incapacitated him. The Cursed Brush remarked that the duck man was begging for mercy and suggested letting him go. This made Chung reflect on his own past as he observed the duck man feigning tears. In a desperate move, the duck man secretly grabbed the spear he had earlier and attempted to strike Chung. However, Chung noticed the action just in time and swiftly struck the duck man's neck with his sword, sending blood scattering through the air. Chung understood that begging for mercy in a dungeon was futile. The Cursed Brush feared for Chung's life, but Chung pointed out that he had noticed something crucial. He glanced at the system notification, which revealed that his MP was now only 57 out of 100. Shocked, he realized that just one attack had consumed nearly half of his MP, prompting him to use it more sparingly. He retrieved a potion from his bag and began to drink, knowing he needed to keep his MP full since there might not be opportunities to recharge during battle. The cursed brush suddenly asked why Chung didn't opt for a longsword or a dagger, instead choosing what it called a toothpick. Chung explained that it was a rapier, and since he lacked a weapon he was skilled with, he selected one that was as long and light as possible. Just then, Chung glanced at the system screen and wondered why his mission hadn't been marked as complete yet. The screen had updated, but the counter showed no progress. It turned out the duck man was still alive and capable of using his whistle. Realizing the trouble he was in, Chung quickly turned around, knowing he was in deep trouble. Chung thought he had delivered a fatal blow to the duck man when the system screen changed from 0 to 1, indicating he had indeed killed the monster. However, a swarm of duck men suddenly appeared in the water, all aiming toward his position. Recognizing the sound of the whistle, Chung knew they would respond quickly. The cursed brush scolded him, saying he shouldn't have attacked so lightly. To Chung's shock, the group of duck men leaped into the air, catching him off guard. Fear gripped him as he hesitated, unsure whether to fight or flee. Surrounded by the duck men, he felt trapped with no apparent escape. Just then, a ray of light caught his attention, offering him a glimmer of hope. Encouraging himself, he realized there might be a way out. Determined, he reached for a smoke bomb and successfully pulled the string, causing a thick cloud of smoke to envelop him. The duck men coughed violently, allowing Chung to seize the opportunity to escape. As the smoke cleared, the duck men were startled to find that Chung had vanished, and they began searching for him. The cursed brush also wondered where Chung had gone, not realizing he was hidden underwater, swimming away while deactivating his Hellfire Embers skill. The explosion from the smoke bomb had mingled with the fire, creating a distraction, albeit a weak one, that bought him some time. While swimming, Chung compared his speed and underwater vision to that of the duck men, realizing they surpassed him. If they spotted him, escape would be impossible. Suddenly, he noticed something strange swimming nearby. Unsure if he was imagining things, he remembered that the only monsters in this dungeon were duck men. To his surprise, he realized the creature approaching him was the cursed brush, which chided him for running away without it. Chung blew bubbles in frustration, struggling to hold his breath. Eventually, he surfaced, splashing water everywhere, which immediately caught the attention of the duck men. They charged toward him, fully aware of his presence. Weak and gasping for air, Chung felt panic rise within him as the cursed brush exclaimed that they had been spotted. Chung blamed the brush for its earlier actions. Without wasting any time, Chung sprinted away as fast as he could. The cursed brush urged him to turn around and fight, but Chung insisted he had nearly escaped before. Checking the map, he felt disheartened to see only one path ahead. The cursed brush reminded him that he had no choice but to fight, questioning whether he could handle the numbers, as dying would mean he couldn't revive. Chung snapped at the brush to be quiet. If they were surrounded, it would be over. As they ran, he began to climb up some rocks. The cursed brush commented on his surprisingly good stamina, wondering if it was a benefit from being a miner. Just then, a duck man appeared behind him, catching Chung off guard and knocking him into the air. Regaining his composure, Chung scanned his surroundings, realizing he was still surrounded by many enemies. A muscular duck man with a bandage over his eye approached, and Chung realized that the earlier explosion had drawn even more of them in, leaving him cornered instead of escaping. Among the group, he noticed one particularly skilled duck man who was drawing his sword, glaring menacingly at him. With little choice left, Chung decided it was time to use his other skill. He activated his Paper Men skill, summoning a paper figure that resembled him. The duck men, confused, charged at the paper figure. Chung narrowly avoided the attack, but in the process, he took damage from the duck man's strike, blood splattering as he reeled from the pain. Wondering why his skill wasn't working as intended, the cursed brush explained that he needed to draw eyes on his paper figures. Chung asked how to do that. The cursed brush slimmed down its form and instructed Chung that it would squeeze out some ink for him to use, emphasizing that the eyes didn't need to be perfect, just recognizable. Chung confirmed that this would allow him to imbue the paper figures with his 3 souls, finally understanding the task at hand. Thanks a ton for watching. If you've made it this far, drop a dope in the comments. And hey, why not check out some of the other videos popping up on the screen while we wait for the next chapters? If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.